Hello everyone, this is Chromý and together we will continue the course Interdisciplinary Approaches to Language and its Use. In this presentation we will focus on the prenatal stage of the first language acquisition. The key question we may ask when considering the prenatal stage of language development is whether babies really start to learn a language before birth or not. If the answer would be yes, we should ask what exactly can they learn and what not. So what do we know about fetuses? From the physiological point of view, we know that fetuses can hear during the last trimester of pregnancy. More precisely, they start to hear around 28th week of gestation. So they typically have about 10 to 14 weeks in the utero to get auditory input. However, since they are in the mother's body, they can hear only certain aspects of speech. What we know is that they can hear speech rhythm, certain vowel distinctions, such as distinction between A and E, differences in tone height and duration. This is definitely less than what can they hear after birth, but it still presents an opportunity for them to learn. Now let's have a look at 3 classic studies on prenatal language learning. Anthony de Casper and Melanie Spence conducted a study where 33 pregnant women recited a speech passage from a fairy tale during the last 6 weeks of pregnancy. They did this every day twice in a quiet place while they felt the baby is awake. Interestingly, the authors of this study found out that the babies preferred this passage over a different one after they were born. In another study by Anthony de Casper and his colleagues, pregnant women recited a short rhyme to their babies. They did so every day between 33rd and 37th week of gestation. Afterwards, the fetuses were stimulated by recordings of the same rhyme and a different one. The authors found that the fetuses were able to distinguish the different rhymes. The third study we will mention here is a paper by Jacques Mellet and his colleagues. In one of the experiments, babies from monolingual French families were tested when they were 4 days old. It was found that they distinguished between French and Russian, and also that they preferred French over Russian. On the previous slides, I presented the findings of 3 studies which targeted prenatal learning. However, we may ask, how did the researchers actually come to their conclusions? How can we measure what language newborns prefer, or whether the fetuses recognize a certain rhyme? In the studies I presented, 2 methods were employed, and these are fetal heartbeat measurement and the so-called high-amplitude sucking method. Fetal heartbeat is measured by an electrode which is put on the pregnant woman's belly. High-amplitude sucking method uses a dummy connected to a machine which measures the sucking rate. Both these methods are based on the same principle. If the fetus or newborn is presented with something familiar or with a new stimulus, it gets excited and its heartbeat rate or sucking rate gets higher. This is called dishabituation. When the baby gets accustomed to the stimulus, it gets so-called habituated, and the heartbeat and sucking rate goes down. Based on the 3 presented studies and various other researches, we can be certain that babies indeed learn certain linguistic aspects before they are born. Nevertheless, there are many open questions. One of them is to what extent is the prenatal learning important for the process of language acquisition? Does it, for example, mean that babies with strong prenatal input have an advantage and are acquiring language faster than those without this kind of input? Another question is, to what extent is the prenatal learning responsible for the abilities of the newborns? We will talk about these abilities in the next presentation. Before we will conclude this presentation, I have one reading tip for you. In case you would like to get a more detailed understanding of prenatal learning, you should read this very interesting review article by my two colleagues, Kateřina Chládková and Nicola Pero. That is all from me now. See you next time.